Hi, everyone, and welcome to Developing a Strong Workplace Culture. A little bit about me, for those that don't know, my name is Chris Broughton. I am the owner and consultant with Upsourced HR. I am a chartered professional in human resources as well as a senior professional in human resources. Upsourced HR provides HR supports, HR audits, performance management, different training options, mentorship, as well as workplace investigations. So, what is workplace culture? It's essentially the sum of its values, traditions, beliefs, interactions, behaviors, and attitudes. And specifically, what we're focusing on is a lot of the values and beliefs, which then kind of filter into the different traditions and interactions, behaviors, and attitudes within that organization. So, really, what it boils down to is really the values and beliefs of that organization. So why is it important? Essentially, workplace culture is important because it attracts talent, it drives engagement and retention, which then can increase the has the overall impact on performance, and it has an impact on happiness and satisfaction within the organization, which again can have a positive impact on performance overall. So workplace cultures can be both a positive and a negative experience. And so what we'll take a look at is a little bit of both the negative as well as the positive of the workplace cultures. So some of the attributes of negative cultures, the employees feel as if they're micromanaged. They have no autonomy. Uh, it's a culture where bullying and harassment is tolerated. There's a lot of poor communication within the organization. There's hyper competition, and so employees are fighting essentially each other or competing against each other to the point where there's no collaboration amongst them and their peers. This can also involve things like office gossip and really just a lack of leadership commitment towards driving the goals of the organization. So some of the attributes of a positive culture are really just kind of the flip of the negative culture. This includes an environment where there's a level of autonomy and trust, and so employees are given trust within their roles as well as autonomy to make decisions. There's strong engagement from the employees towards the organization, and so that basically involves them taking a little bit more of a active role in their position as well as the organization. There's a leadership commitment, and so organizations and the leaders within them are really making a strong push for the values and beliefs and making sure that they are involved or that they are considered through all aspects of their of the business. There's a lot of open communication, and so employees feel free to have the communication with supervisors, managers, senior leadership staff, and asking the questions. And there's some open book management going on, and so there's again that level of trust that goes along with that organization. And then there's no gossip as well, and so people aren't talking behind each other's backs. If there's an issue that occurs, they'll address it with that other employee immediately and correct that issue as soon as possible. So the question is, does my organization need change? And obviously, this is something you need to ask yourself, and we'll kind of talk about some questions here. So ask yourself, how do the employees interact? Are they sitting in their office all alone with their door closed, or are they more actively engaged in conversations and working and developing relationships with the organization? How does the office look? Is it messy? Is it clean? Is it dark? Is it very bright? Are there colors? Are there decorations? Are there different things that employees are doing to make the space more inviting for both themselves and for your customers? How often do people work together? So a good question to ask is how often are people working together, or do they just focus on their tasks and their projects and do these things alone? Do they How do they communicate? So are they communicating just through email? Do they pick up the phone? Do they go to the office right next to them and talk to the individual, or would they prefer to send that person an email? What does that kind of interaction look like? What are the common areas like? And so do you have a space for employees to get together? Do you have a boardroom? Do you have a coffee room? These are all things that, obviously you want to be asking yourself, and what type of environment it looks like. How many people would recommend your company to a friend? And so you could do simple surveys, doing a net promoter score. How likely would you be to recommend this place of business to, or as us as an employer? to your friends or acquaintances to come and work for us. If you have a negative score, then obviously this is something that you need to address. And does my culture respond to the needs of my business and marketplace? And so taking a look at what those needs are and how the needs of the business itself, do we need to be a business that is very innovative, being at the forefront of technology, for example, or are we more of a traditional based business? These are all can impact what type of environment that you're looking for, as well as the marketplace. And so, what are your customers demanding from you as an organization? And these really need to be addressed in your in the way that you are developing the culture within your organization. So asking yourself these questions is important, but also talking to your staff and find out what they think the company's values are. It's important to maybe ask them those questions and really kind of start the conversation to figure out what they think those values are and start to document them. As well as conduct a survey to find out some general attitudes within the workplace to figure out what your workforce is thinking. One of the things I often say is don't fix what isn't broke. And so essentially what we're talking about here is, a lot of people are looking at change. We need to make changes. Try to figure out why you're looking to make that change, and then also figure out does this change actually need to happen? Is this something that's working for the organization and working for the staff, or is it something that you're wanting to change because you want to see the change because it's the flavor of the week, and therefore you feel that you need to make this change to make yourself a more attractive employer? One example I can see is a lot of organizations are moving towards unlimited vacation time. It's very trendy right now to offer this to your staff, but it isn't necessarily something that your organization is currently demanding. Take a look at what your utilization rates for your current vacation time are, and then try to encourage maybe more staff to take their vacation entitlements if they have some left over. So you've decided that your organization needs change. The question is where do I start? Essentially, what you want to do is start with a vision. What do you want for your organization, and what do you want your organization and your employees to value? How do we want them to interact? What are our common beliefs, and what impact do we want to have? These are all things that you want to document, those values and those beliefs, so they can start to form the basis for how the organization is going, the attitudes, as well as the interactions that they're going to be having with both the other employees as well as your customers. And so these are truly the values of the organization. And so some examples of what these values could be are things like having a minimal environmental impact. So that's a value that you as an organization hold true to yourself. And so these are all things that you can have as part of that value statement. So some tips for drafting these values: be genuine. It's very hard to have a value not be genuine. And so if something that you have as a value is that you want to give back to your community, make sure that that's something that you believe is very important to the success of both the communities as well as the organization, something that you truly value and that you hold to be true. Don't just copy. I see this with a lot of organizations. They find something they like online, they copy and paste it, and say, these are now our values. Again, this goes back to the point of being genuine. Really take some time to think about what your values are and what you want to bring to the organization. Don't be scared to be different, and trends are not your friend. So again, these are all kind of talking about the same thing, but specifically with trends themselves. I see, again, going back to the unlimited vacation time, a lot of organizations are trying to implement that, but not really seeing or looking at what type of value that's having as far as the overall impact to the organization. So if you want to have a value, something like family, for example, maybe look at some ways that you can have an impact truly on individuals' families as part of your own value statement itself. So point number 2 is starting from scratch, and 2B is gathering support. So if you're just a startup organization, this is kind of where you'll fall into the first category, starting from scratch. And so essentially what you do is you have a clean slate. And so you do have the opportunity to build the values and the beliefs of the organization, of yourself, into that organization, and really kind of weave those values into the procedures, your client interaction, and a variety of those things. And then what you want to do is hire individuals who hold those same values. And so it's very hard for you as an organization to change the values and beliefs of someone else. And so what you want to be doing is looking for individuals that, if family is very important, you want to make sure that you're looking for individuals that family has an important value to them. Again, remembering human rights legislation where we can't discriminate based on their family status. But again, we can look at things like values within our hiring process. So again, if you're an established organization, this is kind of where we can start gathering support for some of the changes that you want to see within your organization. So what we can do is identify individuals who hold the same values. And so this could just be by simple asking questions, gathering information on individuals through those conversations, and trying to find individuals who have those same values. Gain support from the senior leaders, and look for employee leaders. So the senior leaders are going to be very important because if you're trying to make a culture change and they're not supportive of it, or they haven't been included in this, it'll be very hard for you to make the changes that you're looking for. Also, you're looking for employee leaders, as these are the individuals can have quite a bit of impact on employees and their peer groups. Without being a top-down approach, you can actually use them to help push the drive for that change within the organization. Develop a culture committee to champion the initiatives. And so this basically looking at the opportunity to, if we have a goal for a certain value that we want to establish within the organization, your culture committee can help look at different initiatives that they can drive, including training, whether it be a special day to recognize this particular value. Those are all things that this culture committee can do to help you establish that value. And then also work with your human resources department or professional to discover different opportunities that they may not be aware to you right now about that different opportunity as well. Step number 3 is communicate your intent. Be open and honest with your team. Solicit feedback and don't try to change them subversely. I've seen this happen before, where organizations try to make a culture shift, but basically they're just not telling the employees of what's happening, and they try to, like I said, try to change them subversely and try to change them without their knowledge. You're going to get a lot more buy-in if you communicate what's happening, so that people understand why you're pushing a certain initiative or why you're pushing a certain policy change. If you can then bring it back to that, these are the values that we want to hold, and this is why we're making this change, is to uphold this particular value. And then let's solicit the feedback. So it's important to gather the feedback from your group and make sure that they are on board with these changes and get their support with it as well. Step number 4, build those values and beliefs into your business practice. So again, this is kind of where you weave your values and beliefs into the business practice. Policies, procedures must match these values. And so if there's any type of incongruence between your value and belief and what a business practice is, then people are left confused as to what they should be following, whether it be the value or the business practice. Make sure that they are built together. Establish programs and initiatives to support the culture vision. And so this could be things including different, like I said, training programs to really establish what the vision for the culture is. And then lastly, train your staff and the senior leaders on the expectations. And so making sure that they are aware of how you expect them to be behaving in your workplace. One example is trust. And so if you value trust and you want to demonstrate that you value trust with your employees, you could look at things like introducing an open book management style within the organization. And so you're really starting to develop a little bit more of a trust level by including individuals in some of the financial matters of the business, so that they're aware of kind of what's going on, as opposed to keeping them in the dark. This shows that you value trust and that you trust them as an employee. Step number 5, design the physical workspace. Again, we want to make sure that the physical workspace matches what we hold as a value. Are people given spaces to interact? What do these spaces provide? How do they align with our values? And how can we design our workspaces, our workplaces, to align with these values? And so, if you're trying to have as a value of open communication, friendly communication, strong interpersonal relationships, those type of things within the organization, make sure that you provide employees the opportunities or the spaces for them to really interact as a group, and have collaboration. If that's one of your values, give them the opportunity and the spaces to have that collaboration. Number 6, design the digital workspace. And so this is very important as well to have our values. How does communication flow? And so if you're having this open communication, making sure that individuals have the tools that they can access to have that communication. Are there processes or procedures that go against our values? And so this is quite often I see, trust as a value, for example, and yet you have a policy procedure on employee monitoring for computer use. Well, that really kind of goes against that trust value that you want to demonstrate, and with the business practice of monitoring your employees. Are staff given the resources to collaborate online? So again, if you're having collaboration, employee collaboration as part of your values, making sure that that you give them the tools and the access to actually have those interactions. And then step number 7, providing the resources. So if something like volunteering and giving back to the community is very important as a value that you hold as an organization, are staff given the time off to volunteer? Are they given the resources to provide match up with that value? Do we provide flexible hours to staff who have outside commitments? So again, if we hold values as a family, for example, do we give them the opportunity to have the flex time to meet the needs of their children or parents or what have you? Do we donate to causes we believe in? So again, if we believe in things like having a minimal environmental impact or protecting the environment, are we matching that up with our actions? And if we say we care about our employees, how do we show it? This is very important. Not only in employee recognition, service awards or something like that, but it can be other things, peer source recognitions programs. It can be opportunities for managers to recognize their employees, either monetarily or with an intrinsic or extrinsic type of reward for that employee. And then step 8, create and align goals with the values. By creating goals that don't align with the values, we create conflict. And so we got to make sure that the values and the goals that we're creating match up to those values. And then be inclusive with the goal setting process and ensure that our goals align with our values. Basically, what we're saying there is, again, we want to make sure that the employees are involved with that goal setting process, and then that we're matching those up so that they can see that there is a clear connection between the value as well as the goal itself. Example that has been discussed in previous sessions was about Patagonia. They have very strong values surrounding their environmental impact. So some of the different goals that they could have would be to do something like decrease the use of raw materials by 10%. So again, decreasing their impact on the environment, as well as increase the use of recycled materials by 20%. So again, they're minimizing their waste as well as the impact that they're having on the environment. And then lastly, look for opportunities to recognize individuals and teams that are displaying the values of the organization. We can do this both privately and publicly. Obviously, with publicly, we're recognizing and reinforcing these behaviors with the rest of the group. And then celebrate the wins and learn from the losses. So if we do have a team or an individual that is not displaying the values of the organization, why was that? Were they not instructed properly? Did we do maybe a mishire? Let's take a look opportunity to learn from those losses. But we also want to focus on the positives and not necessarily focus on strictly those negative or those issues. Focus on what we have done properly, and we want to again reinforce those positive behaviors. So lastly, just some keys to developing a strong workplace culture. Be deliberate. And so if we're making changes to our workplace culture, we want to make sure that we are deliberate in what we're doing. Make sure that it aligns with our values. Be consistent. This is very important because it's very important for people to understand and have the expectation of, if I do this, this will happen. And so if you're looking at whether it be performance management or trying to reward behaviors, people have to be able to predict what is going to be able to happen. And we do that and creating that expectation through consistency. Solicit feedback, gather that information from your staff on how they believe the change is occurring, and gather information on if they believe other changes need to occur. You as a leader need to be able to model the expected behaviors. You can't be expected to say, no after hour emails, and then you're sending emails after hours. You need to be able to model that expected behavior. Monitor and adjust. So, always be constantly looking at those the impact that your policies and procedures are having on the organization and the culture within the organization, as well as those values. And then don't be afraid to try things out. If something isn't working, be able to adjust and make some changes that way. And then lastly, again, I mentioned this earlier, but be genuine. Make sure that it's something that you as an organization, as a senior leader, can really get behind as far as a value for the organization. And so it's very, very difficult for a senior leader or an organization to hold the value that is not genuine. Eventually, what will happen is you'll start to get that burnout from trying to be someone that you're not. So thanks for your time. I hope you learned something. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, please feel free to reach out. Look forward to seeing any comments or questions you may have on this post. And thanks a lot, and look forward to next time.